The Empire Strikes Back was the second Star Wars film and is one of the sequel films that's widely considered better than the first. And like all of Star Wars films, it has its very own novelization, though like the first film, has a number of adaptations today. So, like we did with A New Hope, we'll be looking back at all of these different novelizations from throughout the years. The first novelization of the film dropped as part of the film's launch on April 12, 1980, coming out about a month before the film's May 21st release date, just in case you wanted the film spoiled for you, I guess, and was written by Donald F. Glut, a man who did this and also wrote Star Wars 10 for Marvel, but that's all he ever did for the Star Wars franchise. The story hasn't changed much from the film, besides a few continuity notes I'll mention in a minute. Following the destruction of the Death Star, the Rebel Alliance have moved into their base on Hoth. There, Luke is out on a nightly patrol tracking an Imperial probe droid, but before he can make it back to the Alliance, he's captured by a Wampa. Han looks for him after telling the princess he's headed out of the Hoth system back to his life as a smuggler with Chewie, or at least run from the debts he owes to the various gangsters throughout the galaxy like Jabba the Hutt. Leia tells him he's an asshole, but when Luke doesn't report back, Han heads out to track down his friend. He eventually does, finding a freezing Luke who escaped from a Wampa and was told by the Force ghost of his old master, Ben Kenobi, to seek out Yoda on Dagobah. Han saves Luke, but the Imperials arrive soon after, leading to the Rebels' defeat and retreat at the Battle of Hoth. Luke takes off for Dagobah to find Yoda, and the rest of the Falcon crew head off to figure out what to do. Luke lands and meets a small, green, I guess in this case, blue imp named Yoda, who at first seemed to be a wacky woodland creature, but proves to be a Jedi Master, and the one Luke was looking for, to be more specific. Meanwhile, the Falcon nearly escapes the Empire and a giant space worm, eventually to go on to meet up with Han's buddy, Lando. Lando is a traitor, though, and Darth Vader and Boba Fett are on Lando's Cloud City over Bespin, and the team is caught. Luke senses a disturbance in the Force, and Yoda tells him too much is at stake to go, but Luke refuses to see his friends die, so he heads out, despite only training for a small while and not nearly being ready to confront the Empire, or Darth Vader for that matter. He does in fact confront Vader after Han is frozen in carbonite and taken by Boba Fett for a bounty to Jabba the Hutt. Learning Vader is his father and falling out of an exhaust port, clinging on for dear life only to be saved by Leia, Chewie, and Lando, who saw the error of his ways and wanted to pay back his wrongdoings to the rebellion. Like the original film's novelization, this book has some errors that came along with it being written while the film was in production. Most notably, Yoda has blue skin and is based on an early concept from the character, which notably looks a little different from the green imp we got in the final film. You know, here he is blue. Really early on, he kind of looked like a Keebler elf, but even by the time this book was written, Yoda looks more or less like the Yoda we know, just a bit lankier and blue. The book omits Forlom from the bounty hunter scene, and Zuckuss is described as being human. The Ugnaughts are burning scrap instead of putting it on a conveyor belt, and some dialogue was changed. For example, instead of Han saying, "I know," when Leia professes her love, he says, "Just remember that I'll be back." Carbonite freezing was described as dumping liquid on Han rather than the smoke effect from the film. The book also adds some internal lines that recap moments from the original Star Wars film. The book builds on Han and Leia's romance, and I find it interesting since it kind of plays into the fact that Leia is picking a shady sidekick rather than the noble Jedi Knight in shining armor that is Luke Skywalker. Remember, the twist that Leia and Luke are related wasn't a thing yet, or at least not set in stone, so it was unusual that she picked the scoundrel at this time and not the hero, as most stories of this type would, and the book plays into that quite a bit. There is more with the Emperor, with lines of Vader and the Emperor debating what to do with Luke in the long run, which helps build up the twist that Vader is Luke's father. We also get a little more Dagobah training stuff. This book feels like an expansion of The Empire Strikes Back more than a novel, the way the first film's novelization did. As these novels go on, this becomes the norm. The Disney-era Star Wars adaptations often have the subtitle Expanded Edition, as they're intentionally adding more to the story to kind of show what happens in between the scenes and stuff that was cut from the final film or just never in it, but should be added to the continuity. Novels benefit from expansion more than films do, where you literally have to tell and not show. And in films, pacing is more key to keep the audience attention, especially in the theaters, where I think books are allowed to meander a bit more without really feeling the length as much. Anyways, I enjoyed this novelization. Next, we had classic Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, which, like the first classic Star Wars book, was written by Larry Weinberg, and I'm sad to report this is, again, pretty bad. The book takes at most an hour to read again, like cover to cover, though this super 90s looking cover just looks great. It's better than the first novel by Larry Weinberg, but again, the book is so quick. It feels more like a long plot summary than a short novelization, and it again lacks the magic of the film, so I can't really recommend this one, especially when we compare it to Ryder Wyndham's 2004 novelization, which I'm happy to report is pretty good. Like his adaptation of the original film, it is pretty much a straight-up adaptation line for line. Most of the dialogue is pulled straight from the movie, but it adds some internal monologues to better tie the film in together to the prequels. Though A New Hope was certainly the biggest victim of the prequel trilogy, getting numerous plot holes from those films, this book doesn't have to try to jump through nearly as much hoops to explain that stuff away, but it definitely has a few things to explain to kind of tie it in with the modern continuity. Like the last book, this book also got an update in 2017 to amend some stuff to make it work better with the modern canon, though honestly the 2004 stuff is vague enough that the 2017 version didn't need to change a whole heck of a lot to make it fit in with the modern day Disney canon. So You Want to Be a Jedi was the next adaptation, dropping in 2015 along with The Princess, the Scoundrel, and the Farm Boy, this book being written by Adam Gidzwitz. Though unlike the adaptation of A New Hope, this one is pretty much a one-for-one adaptation, just told in the second person, with a new gimmick, this time being that it adds cutaway moments teaching kids fun little Jedi activities. And look, the adaptation is good enough, but these Jedi lessons felt a little weird for me as a grown man to listen to. I know I'm not the target audience, they would probably be fun for kids. I remember when I was like 9, I got a Kung Fu Panda cereal box that taught me some ninja moves, so I can see how this would appeal to kids, but yeah, this kind of disqualifies the book for me as a key adaptation, since it kind of loses the plot a bit with this gimmick. I eventually started just kind of glazing through the lessons. I don't know if that makes me a coward, but whatever. There was also a few cutaways, like this long aside about Yoda telling a fairy tale about 3 brothers that was somewhat interesting, I guess. I didn't like this one as much as the adaptation of A New Hope, but kids of a certain age would probably love this shit. Okay, much like A New Hope, which is a phrase I've said way too many times in this video, The Empire Strikes Back got its own adaptation in the style of William Shakespeare, this time known as William Shakespeare's The Empire Striketh Back, Star Wars Part the Fifth. This was again a pretty straightforward adaptation written in the style of a Shakespeare play. The normal Star Wars stuff is all here, but now the characters talk a bit different, more Shakespearean you could say. One thing expanded upon in this though is how Darth Vader views his life as Anakin. He has a real hard time remembering those days. Again, there are some musical numbers with Chewie singing along with Leia. That was cute, and there's a song from the Ugnaughts on Cloud City. It's fine. I don't really think it's my thing, but Ian Dosher has made several of these, so people must like them. Anyhow, that was The Empire Strikes Back Novelizations. Again, Ryder Wyndham is kind of the play if you want to read a straight-up adaptation, and the original novel has some good expansion, but these days, portions of the story have been retconned, so it's not the 100% accurate version you get with Ryder Wyndham's novel. But it is interesting, since you get to see some changes that would ultimately be made during production, most notably the fact that they call Yoda blue like 1,000 times, which just kept tripping me up. You gotta stop. Yoda's green, bro. He's green. Anyhow, check out my Star Wars playlist, which is about to pop up in right now.